Hello and welcome to Indus News. Live from Islamabad, I'm Nile Shudra and these are the headlines. In Afghanistan, a provincial religious council has been killed in an IED blast in northern Takhar province. Separately, 2 civilians were killed and 16 others wounded in a blast in Balkh. A military commander was also killed in the ambush with the Taliban near Logar. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says Pakistan provides Tajikistan a gateway to Central Asia through CPEC. At a joint press conference with his Tajik counterpart Sirajuddin Muhriddin in Dushanbe, Qureshi stressed the need to boost trade and military ties between the two nations. Pakistan and Tajikistan have agreed to reactivate joint working groups to promote bilateral cooperation in different fields. Countries across the world continue to register a record surge in COVID-19. Hungary, Ukraine, Poland, India, and Brazil have reported record deaths overnight, while Turkey and Greece saw a record number of infections in a day. Globally, the virus has claimed over 2.8 million lives and infected 128 million people, including 14,434 in Pakistan. In Yemen, the army says it has killed a number of Houthi fighters in multiple attacks on rebel positions. The military says it has liberated many areas from Houthi control in western province of Taiz, an oil-rich Marib governorate. And in tennis, second seed Stefanos Tsitsipas and fourth seed Andrei Rublev have advanced into the quarterfinals of the Miami Open. Tsitsipas defeated 24th seed Italian Lorenzo Sogno 6-0, 6-2, 7-6 and to advance, while Rublev beat Croatia's Marin Cilic 6-4, 6-4 to set up a quarterfinal clash with American Sebastian Korda. Earlier top seed Russian Daniil Medvedev also qualified for the final 8. For more news and details, stay tuned. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back. In Afghanistan, a provincial religious council head has been killed in an IED blast in northern Takhar province. Separately, 2 civilians were killed and 16 others wounded in a blast in Balkh. A military commander was also killed in an ambush in Logar province. The Taliban have claimed responsibility for the attack on the commander. In recent months, the country has witnessed an uptick in attacks targeting Afghan officials, journalists, and civil society activists. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says Pakistan provides Tajikistan a gateway to Central Asia through CPEC. Qureshi said this while addressing a joint press conference with his Tajik counterpart Sirajuddin Muhriddin in Dushanbe. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi stressed the need to boost trade and military ties between the two nations. Qureshi reaffirmed commitment to CASA 1000 electricity project and said it will benefit the region. Pakistan and Tajikistan have agreed to reactivate joint working groups to promote bilateral cooperation in different fields. The foreign minister also called on the Tajik president Imam Ali Rahman as well and congratulated him on his election victory. During the meeting, President Rahman expressed a strong resolve to further increase partnership between the two states. In his meeting with the Tajik Defense Minister, Colonel General Sher Ali Mirza, Qureshi highlighted the need to further strengthen military ties between the two nations. Shah Mahmood Qureshi also invited the Tajik president and foreign minister to visit Pakistan. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani says Iran has seen no serious efforts from the U.S. to revive the talks on 2015 nuclear deal. In a televised cabinet speech, Rouhani said U.S. President Joe Biden has admitted to his failure of his predecessor's maximum pressure policy. He said Biden's administration has emphasized diplomacy, however, its words have not been translated into action. Rouhani added that restoring the nuclear deal would be very easy and requires no negotiations. He said Tehran will halt uranium enrichment within moments if Washington lifts sanctions. This comes amid reports that Washington has proposed a new offer to resolve a deadlock over the landmark 2015 nuclear deal. In Niger, the security forces have reportedly repelled an attempted coup after foiling an attack on the presidential palace. Witnesses say heavy gunfire was heard near the presidency for hours. It comes 2 days ahead of the swearing-in of the president-elect Mohamed Bazoum. Former President Mahamadou Ousmane, who lost in the runoff, has rejected the results, alleging fraud. Ousmane had calls for peaceful marches across the country. However, authorities banned a planned opposition protest today in the capital, Niamey. The U.S. has called on international companies to consider cutting ties to enterprises that support Myanmar's military. At a news conference, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the military's action against its own civilians are reprehensible. The U.S. State Department also ordered its non-essential embassy staff to leave the country due to the unrest. In Myanmar, the activists are holding more protests today despite the military crackdown. Meanwhile, fighting has flared between the army and insurgents in frontier regions, with refugees spilling over borders. More than 520 people have been killed in 2 months of protests against the February 1st coup. In Yemen, the army says it has killed a number of Houthi fighters in multiple attacks on rebel positions. The military says it has liberated many areas from Houthi control in the western province of Taiz and oil-rich Marib Governorate. The military also claimed advancing after dealing heavy damage to rebels in the battle for the oil-rich Marib Governorate. Meanwhile, Houthis' attacks against the coalition forces continue as well. Earlier, Yemen's foreign ministry said rebels targeted refugee camps north of Marib with artillery and missile shells. The Marib offensive has escalated recently as calls from international community ramped up to end the war in Yemen. The Iraqi army says it has destroyed 2 ISIS hideouts in Al-Budor Isle. In a tweet, a defense ministry spokesperson said troops also destroyed a boat and foiled a terrorist operation. He said the joint operation was monitored by the Iraqi Special Forces. Meanwhile, a spokesperson of the U.S. Operation Inherent Resolve said the forces are committed to upholding security. Colonel Wayne Moroto said that the operation aims to stabilize conflicted areas. In Libya, the rival political factions have reached an agreement to unify the country's divided parliament. Lawmaker Fawzi al-Nuwari said that the presidency of the parliament meant in Tripoli. Al-Nuwari said the stakeholders termed the unification of ministries a gift for the Libyan people. The Libyan parliament is divided between 2 houses of representatives in Tripoli and Tobruk. Libya's rival groups agreed in UN-mediated talks last month to form an interim unity government to lead the country till elections. Egypt says it supports Sudan's calls for international Quartet to mediate the trilateral crisis on the Nile Dam project. The Egyptian Minister of Water Resources stressed the need for sincere efforts for the success of negotiations. He said Ethiopia's unilateral measures regarding the dam's construction will result in repercussions. Earlier, Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi also warned that the dam will bring unimaginable instability for the whole region. Ethiopia's dam construction has heightened regional tensions, with downstream Egypt and Sudan pressing for a deal. In Pakistan, COVID-19 has claimed 78 more lives over the past 24 hours. The health ministry says more than 4,700 people have tested positive for the virus overnight. The ministry said the death toll has risen to 14,434. The virus has infected nearly 668,000 people so far, of which more than 603,000 have recovered. The ministry said the number of active cases has jumped to over 50,000, while the country's positivity rate has shot up to 10.8% today. Pakistan's Prime Minister says a holistic approach is needed to tackle climate change. In his article published in The Times, Imran Khan said world's major economies should help countries like Pakistan that are doing the best to reduce carbon emissions. He said Pakistan's climate change expenditure is hovering around 6% of the annual federal budget and is expected to rise further. The Prime Minister said Pakistan has been ranked as the 8th most vulnerable country to climate impacts. Welcome back. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the U.S. will speak about the human rights everywhere, including at home. He was presenting the State Department's first human rights report under President Joe Biden. The report criticized Iran, China, Russia, and others for violent crackdowns, especially on opposition and minorities. The State Department said a large number of people continue to suffer under brutal conditions in 2020. It added the coronavirus pandemic also placed obstacles to human rights and fundamental freedoms. Blinken tried to dispel the notion that the report targets any country in particular.
Whether it's China, Russia, or anyone else, we're not standing against any of those countries. We're not trying to, for example, contain China or keep it down. What we are about is standing up for basic principles, basic rights, and a rules-based international order that has served us and countries around the world very, very well.
In the U.S., witnesses continue to testify on the second day of hearing in the George Floyd murder case that spawned the BLM movement. They described how Derek Chauvin, the former Minneapolis policeman charged with Floyd's murder, was unmoved by their pleas. A Minneapolis firefighter told the courtroom she pled the police to allow her to give Floyd medical attention. She said because of her training, she instantly recognized that Floyd had an altered level of consciousness. The firefighter said she identified herself as a medic, but the police prevented her from giving chest compressions to Floyd. Earlier, the jurors also heard the teenager who recorded the video of Chauvin pinning the neck of Floyd. In Indonesia, a woman has been killed in a gunfire at Jakarta's National Police headquarters. Local media said the woman entered the compound with some other people and pointed a gun at police officers before being shot dead. Police have termed the incident as a terror attack. This comes days after two suicide bombers attacked a cathedral on Sulawesi Island, wounding 20 people. SpaceX has announced the final crew members of what they call the world's first all-civilian mission to space. The mission, dubbed Inspirational 4, will be commanded by a 38-year-old billionaire philanthropist, Jared Isaacman. Christopher Sambrowski and Dr. Sian Proctor will join previously announced crew member Haley Arsenault. SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket will launch the crew aboard a Dragon spacecraft later this year. The crew members will undergo commercial astronaut training by SpaceX. The mission is being targeted for 15th of September from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. It will be monitored by SpaceX Mission Control. China has launched a new Earth observation satellite from the Joaquin Satellite Launch Center. The satellite GoFin 1202 was launched aboard a Long March 4C carrier rocket. The satellite will be used in land surveys and urban planning. It will determine and register land rights, road networks design, crop yield estimates, and disaster prevention and relief. The latest launch was the 364th mission of the Long March rocket series. In Belgium, a chocolate maker is trying an unusual way to boost his business as the pandemic has kept foreign tourists away from the brew's city. More in this report.
On a spring day, the picturesque city of Bruges, crisscrossed with canals, is normally humming with foreign tourists. But plummeting visitor number has taken a toll on many of the shops in town. In such times, chocolate maker Dominic Persone has concocted spring specials ahead of Easter. He says the customer wants to go on an adventure when they are eating something. The former chef is particularly proud of his praline.
So we make a juice of grass, Granny Schmidt, and to put an extra acidity on it, we use the Japanese lime. It's yuzu. And the combination of those two, it's amazing. It's of course important to find the right balance between your chocolate, an origin chocolate, and then those flavors.
Persone says he believes chocolate contains a secret ingredient that has the power to counter the lockdown blues. Customers at his shop echo his sentiment.
What it brings, mostly extra fat, but also extra joy. And I think it's good during these times. Like now I'm gonna buy something for me and my girlfriend because with Corona we're not seeing much of our friends. It's very hard and that makes life a little bit better. So I would say chocolate makes life a bit better.
Belgium is trying to stem the third wave of COVID-19 infections, with most non-food shops open only by appointment. More than 22,000 people have died from the virus in the country, among the world's highest per capita fatality rates.
The Indian rupee has weakened to its lowest level in a month. It comes as traders expect higher demand for dollars due to the financial year's end in India. The partially convertible rupee is now at 73.53 per dollar. The rupee advanced about 0.1% in March to 73.38 to a dollar. It paired most of the month's gains as State Bank rushed to buy dollars ahead of the fiscal year's end. Experts predict more devaluation in Indian currency amid increasing inflation and continued central bank intervention. The Purchasing Managers Index for China's manufacturing has expanded to its highest level this year. The National Bureau of Statistics says the manufacturing PMI stood at 51.9% in March, up from 50.6% in February. The NBS data shows China's new export orders index rose to 2.4% in March. Meanwhile, the imports index also soared to a new high in recent years as it reached 51.1% mark. China's manufacturing sector has now remained in expansion territory for 13 straight months. This follows ramped up production at factories nationwide, while upbeat export orders providing a further boost. European stocks are trading in mixed territory, reflecting sentiment in the Asia-Pacific and U.S. markets. Investors will be keeping an eye on the details of President Joe Biden's infrastructure plan. The Pan-European Stock 600 hovered around the flat line, with telecoms gaining while banks slipped marginally. The CAC 40 in Paris and Frankfurt's DAX shed fractionally each. Italy's FTSE MIB gained close to 0.5%. FTSE in London edged down around 0.25%. It's now time to take a look at the weather around the world. For the latest news updates, you can follow us on our social media at Indus.news.